Welcome back to Elements of Art in our unit on value. I'm Natasha and I have yet another art question for you. How do you add value to your art? Did you know that there are many different techniques that you can use to add values from light to dark into your art? As we learned in the last lesson, value creates the illusion of depth and form in your artwork. Without it, your drawings can look flat and lifeless. Shading is the technique or techniques we use to create value. You did a great job learning about value scales in our previous lesson. Now let's embark on an interactive journey to learn shading techniques. Let's get started. In today's lesson, we'll explore some different techniques for adding value, also known as shading. We'll look at the process of each technique and provide examples of when they should be used. Additionally, we'll offer some exercises to help you practice each technique and improve your shading skills, and discuss other ways to add value with shading. Let's look at some spheres and compare and contrast how value is seen in each. What do you notice? Do you see both light and dark values? What is different about the application of those values and how they look? Values in art are created using a variety of different techniques. These techniques allow artists to capture a wide range of values while allowing for variety in surface appearance, texture, and expressiveness. We will be covering the techniques of smooth shading, hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and scumbling. Take a glance at this image. It is easy to see the values, right? But let's zoom in and see how those values were created. So much variety. Today's lesson will provide some insight into some of the complex techniques artists use to create value. Smooth shading, also known as blending or smudging, is a technique that involves smoothly transitioning from one value to another by gradually mixing or blending the colors or tones together. When do you think that smooth shading might be the best technique to use when applying values? Smooth shading creates a soft and seamless appearance in your artwork and is the most commonly used technique when applying values to a drawing. Because this technique involves smudging and smoothing, it provides a very soft appearance to a finished work. To achieve smooth pencil shading, apply gradual layers of graphite using a light touch, gradually building up the layers and blending them together for a seamless transition. Experimenting with different blending tools and techniques will allow you to discover your preferred method for achieving the desired effects. While a blending stump is typically recommended, you can also use your fingertips, a small piece of paper towel, or other tools. The technique of smooth shading is particularly effective for creating soft textures like fur, clouds, or skin tones. Now go ahead and pause the video and do your own smooth shading in the assigned box in your lesson PDF. Try to create a light and a dark value. Next is hatching. Hatching is a shading technique that involves drawing parallel lines of various densities. What applications can you imagine when you see the hatching technique? Can you see how this technique can add texture and depth to a drawing? Hatching is a versatile technique that can be used to create everything from subtle shading that you see in the image of the rodent to bold, dramatic strokes in the separations of the farmed landscape. The chosen direction of the hatched lines provide texture and motion. This technique can be used with a variety of media, including pencils, pens, and markers. Hatching can be done with light or heavy pressure, and you can vary the spacing and angle of the lines to create different effects. For example, you can use lines that are closer together to create darker values, and lines that are farther apart to create lighter values. Hatching is great for adding texture to surfaces like clothing, wood, or rocks. And it's useful for creating tonal variations on things like faces or bodies or other objects. Find the specified area in your lesson PDF and give hatching a shot. Create a light and a dark value. Cross-hatching is a variation of hatching in which two sets of parallel lines intersect perpendicularly to create a mesh-like pattern. Have you ever seen a drawing use this technique before? How do you think this technique would best be used? By layering these lines at different angles, you can create a rich textured effect that mimics the look of shading in a vintage printed image. This technique is particularly useful when you want to create a more complex texture or depth in your artwork. This shading technique can be challenging to master. To achieve crosshatch shading, you use a series of intersecting parallel lines in different directions, overlapping them to create a mesh-like pattern that indicates light and shadow, resulting in a textured and layered effect. To create different effects, you can vary the thickness, spacing, and angle of the lines. Crosshatching can be used for shading complex objects and surfaces with multiple directions and planes. It can also be used to create an interesting texture for a background. Go ahead and fill in the crosshatching technique box in your lesson PDF. Remember to create a light and a dark value. Stippling is a shading technique that involves creating a pattern of small dots to build up areas of tone. Stippling is a time-consuming technique, but can be very effective when used with patience and care. For what sort of drawing could you imagine using the stippling technique? This technique is particularly useful when you want to create a soft gradient in your artwork. Stippling provides a distinct appearance that you can't achieve with other techniques. It also provides an opportunity to create fine, detailed values in small areas of an image. While there is a lot of effort and a lot of dots involved, stippling can produce delicate and subtle shading effects. By varying the size, density, and spacing of the dots, you can create a range of effects, from fine detail to bold and graphic shapes. This technique is easier with marker or ink pen than with a pencil. Stippling can be used to add texture to an object. It's useful for tonal gradations, such as that subtle shadow underneath your nose. Its softness also does well when depicting dirt or sand in a drawing. Go ahead and fill in the stippling box in your lesson notes with the shown technique, showing a light and a dark value. Scumbling is a technique that involves applying layers of overlapping, erratic, and often curly lines to create a soft effect. Can you think of any ideas for the application of values with scumbling? What do these curly lines make you think of? Did you perhaps think of hair? Well, it is true that it is often used for depicting hair, as you can see in these images. This technique is also used to create atmospheric effects in landscapes. Scumbling can be used to create interesting textures, such as rough surfaces, foliage, or as we've seen, curly hair. Scumbling can also be considered as squiggle shading or scribble shading. Scumbling is overlapping, looping pencil marks. By using light pressure, you create a delicate misty effect, while a heavy pressure can create a bold and graphic effect. Scumbling is pretty fun because it's like controlled scribbling. Scumbling allows for messy lines drawn for the purpose of creating texture and atmosphere. Now it's your turn again. Go ahead and give Scumbling a try. Now it is time to create value scales using these methods that we have discussed throughout this video. But we are not going to divide our value scales up into individual sections this time. Instead, we are going to show our gradation of value in one continuous block. These value scales that are not divided into distinct tones are called graded scales. After the video in your PDF, you will have the opportunity to complete a practice activity making graded value scales using these techniques you have learned today, including smooth shading, hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and scumbling. Remember, just like when creating value scales in the past video, lighter values use light pressure and less overlapping, and darker values use harder pressure and more overlapping. Some of the techniques will take longer than others, but take your time and try to create a visible progression from light to dark in each graded value scale. So now that we've covered all of these different techniques for creating value, how do you know which one to use? Well, it all depends on the effect that you are trying to achieve. For example, if you want to create strong, bold contrast, maybe cross-hatching is the way to go. Or if you want to try something subtle and delicate, perhaps try stippling. If you're looking for an organic feel to your landscape or your portrait, scumbling might be just right. See, it all depends on the effect you're trying to achieve. So, do you think that the shading techniques we covered in this video for creating values that included smooth shading, hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and scumbling are the only ways you can add values to your art? Well, nope. The number of techniques and combinations of mark making and media application are vast. Consider this engraving by Albrecht Dürer. Notice it is easy to see the values. You can see the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. But also notice the variety of line techniques and marks used to apply that value. This is just one example of what we mean when we talk about other methods of applying value. Pause the video to take a further look at this image in your PDF and see if you can locate and replicate some of the shading techniques used by Dürer. Shading techniques add life, variety, texture, and emotion to your drawings and paintings. Shading is all about mastering value to make your art pop. Experiment with different materials. Combine techniques like hatching and cross-hatching, or create your own method of mark making to develop a shading technique all your own. Have fun with shading, and remember, art is all around you. Hey, hey.